Hey, first of all, I want to thank you for listening to this. I really have felt the need to get this off my chest, so here I am. So I suppose now is when I start the story. So this was about 8 years ago over the summer in Colorado. My buddy and I, who will be referred to as Ryan, were out on a Bigfoot hunting expedition. Not to kill, but to catch evidence of its existence. For this reason, me and my friend had brought a bunch of cameras, ranging from thermal cameras to motion censored. We had a lot. One of these said cameras was quite special to me. You could say that it was my favorite. There wasn't anything special about the camera itself, rather the sentimental value that it had. This camera was given to me by my mother for my 13th birthday, who had passed away 1 year later. The reason I brought the camera was because of its value to me, and how much more value to me it would have if I had caught evidence of Bigfoot on it. Looking back now, I could see how this decision was quite stupid, and there were many things bad that could have happened. From a peaceful deer hitting it with its antler, to another person finding it and stealing it. But none of this had gone through my head at the time, so I brought it anyways. Me and my friend arrived at the said spot Bigfoot was spotted. As we were moving out all of our gear, I just felt an off-putting vibe from the spot. Shrugging it off, I continued moving our gear out on a table, which included the cameras from earlier, raw meat, to bait him in front of the cameras, ghillie suits, to walk around a little to see if we can't find him, and GoPros, to go on our heads while roaming. After everything was set up, we enjoyed ourselves making some lunch, a campfire, and really just messing around. Not loudly, of course, because the entire point was to catch Bigfoot. As night came upon us, we had slowly started drifting out of our camper and getting energy drinks to be able to stay up all night. Our plan was simple: start off the night roaming for about 4 hours, and finish it watching the cameras that we had set up that were able to broadcast live footage to our computer. We put on our ghillie suits and our GoPros, and lastly, a rifle each, considering worst came to worst. As we started to head out, I noticed the faint stench of something rotten in the air. I asked Ryan if he had noticed anything weird, and he replied with, "Oh no, it's probably just the meat that we set out earlier. Doesn't last long out in the heat." Assuming that he was right, I just headed on with him. But I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that the stench of freshly rotten meat was distinctly different than very old rotten meat. I was thinking of the ways that this could have been the same meat when Ryan had stopped suddenly. I started looking around and I noticed it too. It was hard to describe, but anyone who's seen A Quiet Place will know the basic look of the creature that we saw. It was a gray, humanoid-like creature with long legs and arms, but the main feature that set this creature apart from the ones from A Quiet Place, this creature had massive, bulging eyes. I slowly got down to the ground and I observed this creature. Ryan, noticing, slowly did the same thing. As we went down, I realized that we had gotten it on camera, which conclusively meant that this expedition was a massive success. But before I could become too excited, I completely reached the ground to crush some leaves, making a very loud sound. My first instinct was to start running, but Ryan had pulled me to the side behind a tree, carefully peeking around the corner. I noticed the creature was preparing to attack the position that I was just in. Trying to stay as quiet as possible, I stayed completely still. Ryan, realizing as well, he stopped moving too. As the creature ran by, I whispered very quietly, "We need to leave now." Ryan whispered back, "We need to get to the trailer. We have evidence of something in these woods, Bigfoot or not, but we can't stay here overnight." I was about to agree with him until I remembered my camera. That camera meant so much to me that I didn't want to just leave it there. I replied to him. You know how much that camera means to me. I can't just leave it behind. Ryan sighed and said, "Oh, fine. Where did you set it up?" Thinking through where we were in the current moment, I replied, About 2 miles west, maybe less." Ryan instantly replied with, "No, that's way too far. We can't do that." I completely agreed, but I knew this thing was nocturnal. So that means if we made it back to the camper, that we could wait it out and go get my camera later. After telling Ryan my idea, he figured that it might just work out. But we had to stay as quiet as possible in getting back to the camper. Every step that we took, we were as quiet as possible, and we figured any disturbances would attract this creature. We checked every step to make sure that it was quiet. Now we configured that the creature that we were dealing with, its eyes either didn't have a purpose, or it couldn't detect us with our ghillie suits. But we also knew that it'd attack sound. So if we were to get attacked, we would just have to take a few steps back to avoid it being killed. With this, we attached some night vision goggles that we had brought with us. We were unsure as to if this creature had a heat signature, meaning these could be throwing us down, but it was a risk worth taking. As we inched closer to our RV with each step, we felt more unsafe. We hadn't seen the creature in action yet, but we also weren't wanting to. Once we were close enough to the RV, we got inside and closed the door as slowly as possible. Once the door was closed, I felt a false sensation of relief, and I grabbed an energy drink. Now at first, you would think that there was nothing wrong with grabbing an energy drink, would you? Well, we learned how that's so wrong. As I grabbed the drink, I offered Ryan one too. He accepted and we were getting ready to open them. But that all too familiar crack of the can. The very instant that I opened that drink, I knew that if the creature was anywhere near us, that it would plow straight through the RV. I instantly grabbed a hold of Ryan and threw us both on the bed near the back of the RV. And sure enough, a few seconds later, a loud bang, and with the last of 3 strikes, the door was shattered. Now we assumed this creature's eyes didn't have any value, but that was at night, because the instant that it ran in, it turned its head to look right at us. Its pupils dilated and it was ready for the attack. Both me and Ryan panicked and we started running towards our rifles, when the monster jumped over us and stood in front of us. Now one thing we probably should have done was turn the lights off, but we didn't think of that at the time. No, the instant that we could, we ran our butts straight out of that RV. While we were running, we got split up, which is definitely not a good thing when being hunted by a creature such as this. I continued running away when I found a bush to hide in. I heard nothing crinkling or crackling around me, so I quickly but quietly hid myself within the bush. A few minutes after I situated myself, I heard a scream in the distance, but this isn't the inhuman scream you expect to hear from humanoid creatures. This was Ryan's scream. Now I'm not a genius, but I knew this meant one of 2 things. Number 1, Ryan was probably dead, or number 2, he was in great danger. This is where I had to make a very risky decision. I could either walkie-talkie to him and tell him where I am so that he could hide, or leave him so that he could find his own spot. But if he was dead, the walkie-talkie would distract this said creature and keep me hidden for however much longer I might need to be, or it would tell Ryan my location. Now, if he's already in a hiding spot, it will give away his location and possibly get him killed. This decision is still the most difficult decision I've made to this day. And so I did it. I walked in and said as quietly as possible, "Are you safe?" I had no response for about 12 seconds until I got another scream from Ryan, but this one got cut off randomly, and it followed by the typical humanoid creature screaming. I had killed my friend over a camera. I still can't believe myself to this day. I should have known that it was a bad idea. I shouldn't have walked into him. I indirectly had killed my best friend. I sat in that bush for hours thinking of how he could have been alive if I had trusted his survivalist instincts. He could have been alive if my ignorance, no, my idiocy hadn't led me to kill him. I guarantee you that he hated me for that in the last few moments of his life. I sat in that bush until the morning. As soon as it was safe to come out, I decided to leave. I decided that it wasn't worth being here in these woods anymore. But the camera, I mean. Ryan died because I wanted my camera. I just can't leave, and leave his death in vain. So I decided that I was going to get it. I would get that camera, and if I could find it, my friend's body too. You may think that it's not good to have a body with you on a drive, but I couldn't leave my best friend out there to rot. He was always there for me, and now it was my turn. And so I headed out. I knew what I needed to do, and I knew that I was going to do it. Step 1 was find Ryan. As I set out with my rifle, of course, I thought of where his body could be. I knew that I heard him scream to the left of me from within the bush, which could be further up north from the position that I was in. So that's where I would head to. As I was heading on, I noticed the same stench from when we had arrived to the right of me, in some heavy bushes. So I decided to investigate. I headed over and pushed through some heavily bushed area, and what I found was the worst thing that I could have seen. And I still have nightmares and PTSD all from this single place. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of bodies piled upon each other, all of which were gutted, some hanging from their intestines, others dismembered. The ages of these people ranged from a noticeably elderly couple, recently killed, to a toddler, who looked to be no older than 6. All these people were in awful shape. And then I saw Ryan, his head at least, which was on a sharp tree branch, of which the rest of his body also hung. After seeing this, I knew that there was no chance of me getting him down. He was at least 50 feet up in the air, and it was already dang near noon. As I quickly got out of there, I decided the best choice was to get my camera and run for it. Now this would hopefully go easy and not have any problems, but I wouldn't be telling the rest of the story if something didn't. I headed to where the cameras were supposed to be, successfully without anything trying to stop me. Once I got there, I found what looked to be footprints leading from where my camera used to be. I was now upset. I had no friend and I didn't have my camera. And at this moment, I decided that I was getting that thing regardless. I slowly tracked the footprints to the lake, with a rather large waterfall. Mind you, by the time that I got there, it was almost dusk. And then I noticed, as the night came upon me, the creature had come out from the waterfall. I knew everything that I needed to know now. Quietly stepping around the waterfall from the other direction of this creature, I snuck inside. Behind the waterfall was a cave, somewhat deep by the looks of it. As I slowly crept inside, I noticed all kinds of human items, such as boots, smartphones, silverware, and of course my camera. As I quickly moved to my camera, I noticed something else nearby. There was something smooth, gray, spotted black. It was an egg. Now, the first thing that I thought was that it was asexually reproducing, but remembering how old some of the bodies from the death zone, or so I decided to call it, some seemed to be years old, which means that there could definitely be more than one creature. No, there has to be more than one. I needed to get out of here now. I grabbed a hold of my camera and I started running. I knew that if I could run about the same speed, and I considered that I could get far enough away. I might be able to wait out the night again. As I ran, I heard no less than about 5 loud screeches from behind, and then 3 or 4 more of them in the surrounding woods. I was screwed. My first instinct was to hide on the edge of the cave, but this wouldn't work since this is how they get in and out. But then I realized, the water. I could get into the water. If I could get in there and stay as still as possible, the noise of me treading should be masked by the waterfall. So that's what I tried. I dove into the water and I sat there, slowly treading. As I sat there, I saw, considering I had counted right, 17 creatures crawl out of that cave. I had to stay where I was, but I wasn't the best at treading water. No, as a matter of fact, I could only probably last a minute or 2. I started to realize that this was a bad idea, and I slowly started swimming to the other side of the shore. But there was a problem. Considering the size of the lake, by the time that I got to the other side, I would be making so much noise. They would undoubtedly hear me swimming, and if they didn't, they would hear me panting. So once all the creatures were far from the caves, I got out of the water and quickly got to a bush closer to my RV. I can't even count on both of my hands how many creatures had passed by me. They were on a hunt. They wanted to get me. Then as the sun was about to rise, I decided to lift my head up a little and look around, and I saw a creature. And then the dripping noises. I noticed that I was still wet. Due to me standing still and there being no sun to help me dry off, I was still wet and dripping. The creature turned. I slowly moved away, knowing what was about to happen, and within seconds, the place that I had been hiding had a nasty looking set of teeth and claws chewing and clawing it up. As I ran past everything. Other creatures, deer, snakes, and then I realized that they all turned and chased me. Every bird, every bug, everything was on my tail. They had influence over the forest that night. During the day they had no control, but at night, they had almost all of it. And this is why they hunted at night, because they were able to control other animals as well. While they can see in the day, they prefer control over sight. With what was now a massive horde chasing after me, I kept running and running and running until I got back to the truck. I noticed that most of the trailer wouldn't make it back, including the cameras that these creatures were caught on. But at the same time, my life mattered the most to me. I got into the truck and I twisted the key. And luckily, the truck started after a few tries and I stomped on it. I was probably going 60 on the dirt path, which was conveniently faster than everything that I had on my tail. I was out of there extremely quick and I had no time to waste. Once I was out, I contemplated what had actually happened. I mean, I hadn't slept in the past 2 days and I wasn't feeling good at all. I knew that the Bigfoot group that I was on the expedition for would believe everything, but that the cops wouldn't. Going in with a friend and coming out without one looks like it would make me the prime suspect in his disappearance. But then, I should just bring the cops to the death zone, shouldn't I? But I don't want to put anyone else at risk. I then realized how bad the situation really was. Once I was back, I decided to tell the cops what had happened, but to no surprise, they took me into custody. They asked for the location and I told them exactly where, and I told them to only go there during the day. While they didn't find any creatures there, they did find the death zone, and they all came to the conclusion that some of the bodies were older than me, and they inevitably let me free. And to this day, I regret every second of that trip, and knowing that those things existed sucks enough, so I have to apologize to you guys now. But hopefully none of you have gone through anything like I did.